Exposure. It refers to the amount of light that your camera's sensor or film is exposed to. When a photo is darker than it appears to be in real life, then it's considered underexposed. When it's brighter than it looks in real life, then it's considered overexposed. Exposure triangle refers to aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. They work together to determine how bright a photo is. Aperture. It's the opening in the lens that controls how much light enters the lens. It's measured in f-stops. A smaller f-stop number means that the aperture is open wider, and a larger f-stop number means that the aperture is more narrow. Shutter speed. This controls how long your camera's sensor or film is exposed to light. It's measured in seconds and in fractions of a second. A slower shutter speed lets in more light and it creates more motion blur, and a faster shutter speed lets in less light and it eliminates motion blur. ISO. Now this one's got two meanings, depending on what kind of camera you're using. In film cameras, the ISO refers to how sensitive the film is to a light source. In digital cameras, ISO refers to how much light is amplified when a camera is processing a photo. Depth of field. It refers to how much of your image is acceptably sharp, both in front of and behind whatever it is that you're focusing on, and it's controlled by aperture. A wider aperture will cause a shallow depth of field, meaning that less of your photo is in focus, and a narrow aperture will cause a deep depth of field, which means that more of your image is in focus. Bokeh. Bokeh. I'm trying to say it right. Bokeh. Bokeh. No, bokeh. I'm sorry. Bokeh. 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 It refers to the blurry or out of focus elements in a photo when you're using a wide aperture or shallow depth of field. So that blurry foreground or that blurry background is referred to as bokeh. 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 Noise. Noise refers to the visual distortion in a photo when you're using a digital camera. Higher ISO values will cause more noise. This is different from grain, which is caused by the texture of the film that you're using in a film camera. Color temperature. It's a way of describing the color of light, and it ranges from orange hues, which are considered warm, to bluish hues, which are considered cool. White balance. It's used to adjust the color temperature of an image to make the white objects look white regardless of the lighting conditions that you're in, and to make all the other colors look natural. Best practice is to fix your white balance in camera, but you can also fix white balance in an editing program like Photoshop or Lightroom. Kelvin. It's a unit of measure for color temperature, and it measures how warm or cool a light source appears to be. 3500 Kelvin is considered very warm, it's more orange, and 7000 Kelvin is considered cool and it's bluish. Stop of light refers to doubling or halving the amount of light hitting your sensor using aperture or shutter speed, and doubling or halving the amount of artificial brightness in a photo using ISO. There are also half stops and quarter stops? Third stops? It's third stops. Yeah, third stops, not quarter stops. Focal length refers to the field of view or how much of the image is going to be captured. A longer focal length makes things look more zoomed in and compressed, and a shorter focal length or wider angle makes things look more zoomed out. A fast lens is a lens with a wide maximum aperture, like say 2.0, 1.8, so on and so forth. It's called a fast lens because that wide maximum aperture allows you to use a faster shutter speed and still get a proper exposure in your photos. Prime lens. It's a lens with a fixed focal length as opposed to a zoom lens, which is a lens that has a variable focal length. Prime lenses tend to be lighter and cheaper. They usually have better image quality and wider maximum apertures as well. But sometimes you need a good zoom lens. Zoom lenses don't suck. Burst mode or continuous shutter. It's a setting that allows your camera to take multiple shots back to back when you press and hold the shutter button, and it's really good for capturing fast moving objects. Long exposure. It's a technique where you use a slow shutter speed to intentionally introduce motion blur to your photos. It's really useful for things like light trails and panning shots. Double exposure. It's essentially two separate shots combined into one photo. A lot of cameras will allow you to do this in camera, but you can also do it in an editing program like Photoshop. Vignette. It's the gradual darkening of the edges of your frame. A lot of photographers use this intentionally to draw attention to the subject in their photo. If you're new to photography and you would like to learn more, then go ahead and click this video next.